Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Ethics in Society speaker series. Thank you all so much for joining with us tonight. My name is Dr. Jim Hornstein. I am the chairman of the Bioethics Committee at the Community Memorial Health System. Tonight, it's my absolute pleasure to moderate a very special, virtual, and provocative program which asks the question, is gratitude good for you? Now, to help answer this question, it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's special guest speakers. Excuse me, we have some I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, huh? What am I wearing? I'm so sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Please forgive me, do you not know what this is? This is called a Papr, which stands for positive air pressure respirator. In a way, I'm very glad that none of you may know exactly what this is, because if you did, if you saw a doctor or a nurse or a respiratory therapist wearing one of these things in the past 1.5 years, you were probably pretty sick, and you were also probably being seen in the emergency room or the intensive care unit. Do you know what some of these other things are? These are empty Pfizer vials, which not too long ago held 6 doses of life-saving COVID-19 vaccines. Now, I know you know what the following things are. These are, in fact, hand sanitizers, which up until 2020, most of you have never used or had seen. And in fact, other objects of the last 1.5 years are N95 masks, in addition to surgical masks. You, again, probably nor one of these things in public unless you were robbing a bank. So why am I showing you all these things now? Well, here's why. Because it is my hope that beginning next Tuesday, June 15th, when our state attempts to open for all of our country and our state, all things such as Paprs and Pfizer vaccine vials, N95 masks, and hand sanitizers should realistically go into a museum exhibition labeled the things that we use to fight COVID-19 pandemic, such as PPEs. And while it's pretty easy for historians to catalog and store things and stuff like this in a museum, it's a lot harder to catalog and characterize how we as Americans felt and reacted to the massive challenges we all experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I ask you, what will historians say about us, about our feelings, and about how well we coped? Certainly, as individuals and as a community, many of us lost a lot during the last 1.5 years. Some of us lost jobs and savings and money. Others lost time with their friends, their families, school connections, and their religious communities. Still others lost their health, and again, far too many lost their lives. Yet despite these very real losses, I think that future historians will also take notice that many of us, in fact, gained a lot. I know I realized how fragile our lives can be, and that we absolutely needed each other to overcome what a simple single virus could do to create havoc and mess with our entire interconnected world. I've also heard many people express tremendous senses of gratitude to all those essential workers, the firemen, the paramedics, police officers, grocery workers, healthcare workers, farm workers, and many others, who despite real and daily personal risks kept all of us safe and fed and healthy. I've also witnessed incredible appreciation and gratitude to the researchers and scientists and volunteers who use the best of 21st century science to rapidly supply us with amazingly effective and life-saving vaccines. But as we all know, over the past several months, our society has learned the tough lessons that vaccines alone don't save lives, vaccinations do. So on behalf of us in healthcare, a huge thank you to many of you, to our communities, to our Team America, for rolling up your sleeves and really giving next week's grand reopening in California a real shot at a long-lasting success. Which brings me back to tonight's program. Is gratitude good for you? The answer to this question is remarkably similar to how you might answer another classic question, and that is this glass half full or is this glass half empty? If you're not sure, ask yourself this. A few minutes ago, I showed you Paprs. I showed you Pfizer vaccine used vials. I showed you hand sanitizers and N95 masks. If it's your impulse to throw all of these COVID-19 memorabilia into a corner in a museum and never look at them again, then that's one way that the half is half empty. Or are you the type of person who feels the need to reach out and thank many of those men and women who wore these claustrophobic Papr protective equipment all last year in order to save COVID-infected patients? Do we owe them some thanks to those really heroic individuals who risked so much to themselves to take care of others? Do we also wish to reach out to our friends and volunteers and scientists who helped create the Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson's vaccine, which also saves lives from this dreaded COVID-19 infection? And finally, is it beyond us, or should we routinely thank our family, our friends, and our communities who have tolerated putting on N95 masks and surgical masks and using hand sanitizers regularly in order to keep you and to keep me and to keep our entire community safer? Or perhaps this whole COVID pandemic has made you unsure exactly how you're supposed to feel. Are you a half full or a half empty person? Well, you've come to the right program. So stick around for the next 40 minutes as our three special guests try to convince you that based upon good scientific data, gratitude is good. In fact, it's really good for you and for the ones you love. But before I introduce tonight's speakers, I'd like to take a few moments to thank some very important people who are here today. First, I'd like to thank our special host for tonight's program, the Community Memorial Health System. I'd especially like to thank the hundreds of nurses, social workers, maintenance workers, doctors, staff, administrators, volunteers, and the Board of Trustees. In fact, the entire Community Memorial Health System family, who I believe provided the highest level of professional excellence and care, in addition to personal kindness during these most difficult and challenging times. Also, a special shout out to Brianna Callis, Megan O'Neill, and Christopher Charles for being such great collaborators through this entire Ethics in Society series. And finally, on a more personal note, a personal thank you to my wonderful wife, Dana, who for me made the public health mandate for social isolation a lot more social and a lot less isolating. So now let's begin. Our first featured speaker is Dr. Corey Martin. Dr. Martin is joining us tonight from his home in Buffalo, Minnesota. Dr. Martin received his medical degree from Yale School of Medicine. He is board certified in family medicine and practices medicine in a private group practice, but is also a founder of Innovations in Resilience and the Bounce Back Project. Through this work, Dr. Martin tries to create environments of opportunity in which all of us can do the deep, heartfelt work of changing the way we show up and interact in each other's lives. In his free time, Dr. Martin enjoys working on his farm with his wife and 3 daughters. He describes himself as a recovering perfectionist and an aspiring good enoughist. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my extreme pleasure to introduce my colleague and friend, Dr. Corey Martin.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate the wonderful introduction, and I look forward to having a conversation with you and your viewers tonight. And so let me just share my screen here as we get ready to go through this talk tonight. There we go. Let me pull this up here. All right. So thank you. Yeah, thank you again. And so as we get started here tonight, I want to just take a few minutes before we dive into this to do a little quick activity. And it's going to give you all a little bit of an idea of some things that we're going to talk about tonight and why gratitude is actually so unbelievably powerful in our lives to help us be happy, healthy, and live longer. And so before we get started, what I want all of you who are viewing this to do is to pull out your cell phone. I know you have it next to you or you're already looking at it, so pull out your cell phone. And I want you to text somebody in your life, somebody that you care about, somebody that you love, and just text them something to tell them that you care about them or thank them for something. And I'm going to give you a few seconds just to do that. And we'll sit here in silence for about 10 to 15 seconds while you do that. And then I'm going to tell you why you're doing it. So go ahead and get started and do that right now. All right, so while you're finishing doing that, the reason we're doing this is that there is a lot of science behind gratitude rituals in our life and how important they are, and this is one of them. The idea behind this came from a study about 10 years ago that was done out on the East Coast where researchers from Harvard went into organizations and they had people start their day with a ritual of gratitude, like sitting down at their desk, turning their computer on, and sending somebody an email, 1 or 2 lines of something they were grateful for or thanking somebody. They had them do this for 3 weeks, and then they followed these people over the course of the next year. And these people they were happier than people who didn't do this. They were more engaged at work. They ended up being less sick over the course of the year and having to go to the doctor less, and a whole bunch of really positive things. And so it was something from just even that short period of doing a gratitude ritual for 3 weeks that made a big difference in these people. And so that's the kind of stuff we're going to talk about tonight and why it's so powerful and why it's important for us. So before we really dive into this, I just want to thank you all for tuning in tonight. We all have important things going on in our life, and I'm glad you've taken the next 40 minutes or so to sit here and learn something, because I think you're going to learn something really powerful and important that's going to change your life. Thank you for taking the time to invest in your own health and well-being. Just a little bit more about me before we get into this. So as Jim said, I'm a family practice physician. I've been in practice for about 15 years. When I started practice, I did full scope family medicine, which meant I delivered babies, I took care of little kids and old people and everybody in between. One of the things that I realized very quickly in my practice that I did better than most anybody else of my partners or colleagues was that I was better at burning myself out than anybody else. So I got about 5 years into practice. I was completely and utterly burned out. And I didn't know that. I just knew I was frustrated. I knew that when Sundays came around, I dreaded going back to work on Monday, and I was looking for a new job. And I ended up taking a job as the director of medical affairs, which is the physician who's in charge of all the other physicians at our hospital. And that was a half-time job, and I did that because I just wanted to do something different. And I ended up having a wonderful boss who helped me identify my burnout, who supported me, and we grew a program within our organization. And we did really great stuff. Fast forward about 5 years, this was about 5 years ago, then we had some tragic things happen in our community that, to be honest with you, prepared us for today, prepared us for COVID and what happened in the last year and a half. And those things were the death of a couple of my colleagues. One of them was an obstetrician who was killed in a motorcycle accident. One wonderful Saturday, he went out for a motorcycle ride. He kissed his wife, he hugged his daughter, and said, "I'm going to be back in a couple hours, and we'll go out and do something fun." And he never came home that day. And he never came home that day because he was killed in a motorcycle accident. And I remember getting that call that night from my boss telling me that Eric had been killed. And I remember that feeling, that punch in the gut of, wow, like I just saw this guy yesterday. This guy delivered two of my kids. He's my friend, and this could have happened to any one of us as we were leaving our house today, or it could happen to us tonight as we leave our house or go home from work. And so it really was a call for all of us to say, hey, are we really doing what we want to do in life? Are we spending enough time with our family? Are we taking care of ourselves? Are we spending enough time with our friends? And the answer was no. The answer was we were too focused on all of the stuff at work, trying to hurry up and get from point A to point B, that we were neglecting some of the most important things in our life. And so we started doing and supporting each other to get out of work sooner and go home and do some of these things. And we did a really good job for a couple months. And I tell people it's a lot like every year when I decide in January that I'm joining the gym and I'm going to lose 20 pounds this year, and I go religiously for the first week. And then if I were going to be realistic with myself, I'd tell myself, hey, don't forget to put some sort of reminder on your calendar for about February 1st that says, hey, don't forget to cancel your gym membership because you haven't gone for a while. And so that's what happened with this, is that we had good intentions and then we fell back into our old habits. And then we had a second awakening in our community, and that was 3 months later when one of our colleagues, a pediatrician in our community, committed suicide in our hospital chapel. And I remember getting the call that night as well from my boss telling me to get in the hospital and what had gone on. And I remember walking in the emergency room that night, and I remember the look of devastation on my colleagues' faces, on my nurse colleagues' faces, my physician colleagues' faces, and just the feeling of what is going on here? How are we losing the people we love and care about around us? And it really was a call for us to say, hey, you guys didn't pay attention last time around, and so why don't you pay attention this time around? And for me, I wish I could say that that was the only thing that needed to happen, but the very next day, there was one more thing for me. And that's when I walked over to our hospital to do colonoscopies. That's one of the things that I still do clinically. And I walked over to do that, and I walked in, and the medical secretary who was sitting at the desk, she looked at me, her name is Tennille. She looked at me, and what she said, I'll never forget in my entire life. She said, "Oh, Corey, I'm so glad you're here today. Yesterday, when I heard that a doc had taken his life in the chapel, I really thought I was going to hear it was you." And I'll tell you, there hasn't been much that's been said to me in my life that's dropped me to my knees like that comment, because there is a lot of truth in that. There's a lot of truth in how we act every day, and look at people and say, well, you know, they don't look like they're doing too well, but I just want to say hi and keep walking. I don't want to stop. I don't want to check in. I don't want to spend time with people. And COVID has made that so much more difficult for us. And so as we're thinking about how do we return back to normal, my question is, you know, let's not return back to normal. Let's actually bounce forward in this and return back to better, and return back to more connected and more supportive of each other. And we've got a long ways to go, but I think we can do that. And so when all these things happened in our community, it's the more you practice, the more you build the muscle. And so the bad news is you can't just come to this talk tonight and feel like, oh, I've got it now, it's all good. You're going to have to practice this. The good news is we can learn and get better. Second part of this is that as we think about happiness in our life, our long-term happiness is actually not predicted very well by the things that happen around us. They're predicted by how we process that in our brain. And so genetics is part of that, but how we take that information and our mindset, like exactly what Jim had said earlier, is that glass half full or half empty, is actually a better predictor of how happy we're going to be in our life. And so as we look at some of the stuff tonight, and I talk about some of the research around gratitude, I want you to think about that. Our mindset is really important, and it really improves our happiness, probably up to about 15% of just how we look at things, whether we're half full or half empty. So if you ask anybody, I think most people will say, yeah, if there's anything I want more in the world than anything else, I just want to be happy. I'd like to win the lottery, maybe. That would be really great. But, I'd really like to be happy, and I want my kids to be happy. So how do we get that? Fact of the matter is, research shows that having strong quality relationships is your best predictor of happiness. Now, having gone through the last, 15, 16 months of COVID and being socially distanced, socially isolated from people, continuing to build and maintain those relationships has been very hard for us. So how do we continue? How do we build that? How do we get back into the swing of things? How do we get our mojo back so that we can feel happy and healthy and live a long time and live a long, healthy, happy life? And so gratitude is the best, easiest tool for that. So we're going to talk about 4 different tools over the course of the next 15 to 20 minutes here. First one is just something that doesn't even seem like a tool. It's random acts of kindness. So doing this kind of act of kindness out of the goodness of your heart. And so this is Dr. Marty Seligman is a researcher out of the University of Pennsylvania, kind of known as the founding father of positive psychology. And this is a quote from him: "Doing an act of kindness produces the single most reliable momentary increase in well-being of any exercise that's ever been tested." And so what does that mean? So what are we, and when we think about random acts of kindness, what is that? So here's a few of them that I pulled off of our website. And so, it can be things like, you see there's coins at the car wash there. There's a tip left at the hotel in town. There's for the mailman, it's really hot outside here right now. It's been 100 degrees for the past 5 or 6 days. And so there's a container with ice and Gatorade in the mailbox for the mailman. There's a $5 bill in a red box DVD that the next person who pulled that out got a $5 bill, and it said, "Enjoy some snacks on us tonight." And so there's different ways that we can do this. We can bring donuts to work. We can tape a dollar bill onto a soda machine and walk away. And so there's acts of kindness that are really important. And so the research shows that when you do something like this, so let's say you're driving to work, you swing into a Starbucks, you order your cup of coffee, and you pay for the car behind you and you drive off. Doing an act of kindness like that makes the person who received the act of kindness, so the car behind you, they're happier for 24 hours after receiving that cup of coffee from you. However, the most important part of this is for the doer of the act of kindness. So you, by buying somebody an act of kindness, by bringing donuts to work, by doing something like that, we can measure your happiness levels going up for a full 7 days after doing something as simple as leaving some quarters at the car wash. And so acts of kindness are really powerful and important. And you can see they don't have to cost very much. Some of these acts of kindness on this are just Post-it notes that people have written, sayings on, or motivational sayings, and they come in the morning before people get to work, and they put them on people's computers at work and walk off. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. I do want to highlight one. This is one that we try to do every year around the holiday season. So we raise money in our healthcare system, and then we take it to the police department right around Christmas time and say, hey, we want you to give this away. And so what they do is, when they pull people over around Christmas time, holiday season, for a broken taillight or something like that, instead of giving them a ticket, they'll give them an envelope with a $50 bill in it and say, This is a random act of kindness from the Bounce Back Project. Happy holidays. And as you can imagine, over the last several years, our police officers in our community have gone through a lot of tough things. And so they don't get to do a lot of fun stuff. And so this is a really wonderful thing that we can do for our community, to grow our community and to help our law enforcement to connect with our community as well. And so up here on this slide, you see something that I pulled from our Facebook page again. This was a few years ago, and it was posted on our police department's Facebook page by somebody that they pulled over. I was pulled over tonight in Buffalo. I had my 2 children in the vehicle. We had just left my job. I'd been there working there for 3 weeks at a group home, and we spent the night off hanging out there with disabled individuals. My kids wanted to meet everyone. We had dinner with them, we visited, we did crafts, and then we went home, and we got pulled over less than a mile from our house. The police officer asked me if I'd heard of this program and offered me an envelope with $50 in it. What she didn't know is that I haven't received my first paycheck yet. I recently separated from my husband, and money is tight for us. I have $20 in my checking account. The only Christmas presents I have right now are a pack of Uno cards for my older son and some bath toys for my younger son. To receive this in an act of kindness means the world to me. I'm so thankful. I'll find a way to pay this forward, right? And so as this gets posted onto the Facebook page, you can imagine that went viral in our community. And the next day we had our local news out of Minneapolis come out and do all kinds of news stories on this. And the other thing then that showed us is not only is there benefit of being a doer of an act of kindness and a receiver of an act of kindness, but there's also benefit in just even hearing about and witnessing random acts of kindness. And the science behind that shows that when you see something like that, it increases your kindness to other people. It increases your generosity of yourself and others when we see these things. And it kind of creates this experience of, wow, like everything is right in the world. Good things still do happen. And so as this story went out, we ended up receiving call after call from other people in our community and other communities saying, hey, we've got more money that we want to donate. Will you continue to do this? And so something as small as just starting to do some acts of kindness really are ways for us to build relationships amongst each other and within our community, and are really powerful, important ways for us to pull ourselves out of the COVID bubble and back into real life again. So the next tool I want to share is called 3 Good Things. This is one of my favorite tools. It's a simple, easy tool that you do before you go to bed. So before you go to bed at night, you think about 3 good things that happened to you during the day, and you have a little journal notebook beside your bed, and you write them down. And you write a little bit about each one of those things and why it was good and why it made you happy. The idea behind this is that what we know from science is we know that when we fall asleep at night, our mind doesn't completely shut off. It continues to go, it continues to perseverate, it continues to lay down new neural networks that strengthen some of the thought processes in our brain. And those ones that it works on most are the things that we think about within the 2 hours before we go to bed. And so typically, the things that we're thinking about before we go to bed are not great, wonderful things that happen during the day. There are things like, oh, I've got so much stuff I've got to get done tomorrow. How am I going to accomplish it all? I forgot to do that today. That conversation with my brother or with my coworker didn't go well today, and I'm frustrated with them. And so we're thinking about negative stuff. The idea behind this is that what would happen if we think about positive things before we went to bed? Could we create an improved level of happiness? Could we decrease depression in ourselves and others? And so the reason why it's so powerful and so important to think about positive things is this quote from Barbara Fredrickson, I think is so true. The negative screams at you while the positive only whispers. Think about the last time you heard a positive comment about yourself. You kind of let it roll off like Teflon, but the negative stuff really sticks to you. You remember that for a long time. So thinking about and doing positive things is really important in how we help retrain our brain to have a positive mindset. So here's the science behind 3 good things. On the left side, that's the bar graph of happiness. And so if you look at the bars that go up that are in black, those are people who did 3 good things. In this study, they did them for 1 week only, and they stopped. And so you can see at the left side, the pre-test was pretty low. They did it for 1 week. There was a post-test. The happiness level went up a little bit. 1 week later, a little bit more. 1 month later, a little bit more. 3 months, 6 months. And it kept continuing to go up over time, over 6 months. Now, that's interesting to me, because what that means, and what they figured out since then, is that when we do something like this, even if it is just for a week, it helps us see the good things that happen in life and the positive things. And once we start seeing some good positive things that happen, it's easier and easier for us to see other positive things. And it's a training program to incorporate gratitude into our life. Now, if you look at the other graph on the right side, that's what happens in depression. And again, people who did 3 good things are in the black bar. And you can see right after doing 3 good things, their depression levels go down pretty significantly, and they stay down for at least 6 months. And so if I would put the results up there on people who are depressed, that somebody like me as a family practice doc might put on a medicine called an SSRI, which is Zoloft, Paxil, Prozac, any of these medicines for depression. If I would put the outcomes up there for 6 months after starting the medicine, they'd be pretty close to what the outcomes are for just thinking about 3 good things at night before you go to bed and writing them down for 1 week. When they've done more studies on this, and they've extended the time frame that you do 3 good things from 1 week to 2 weeks, some of those positive effects go out at all the way to 2 years after doing something like this. So as you can see, there's there's powerful, important things. If we really truly want to be happy, gratitude is a kind of tool for that. Now, we know the best time to do these things is before we go to bed at night, but really you can do them anytime during the day. And so these are some pictures that I took at work and at meetings that I run. And so when we start our day at the hospital, we start with huddles, and there we start with 3 good things up in the corner there. When I run meetings at the hospital, all of my meetings start with 3 good things. The picture in the middle there is the back hallway of one of our clinics, that we have butcher paper and markers. So if you have a budget like mine, which is about $3, you can afford to do this. You can buy some butcher paper and put it up on the wall. People write things that they're grateful for. Once we fill 1 piece of paper, we put a second, we put a third, we put a fourth, etc. And so there are a lot of different ways that you can do this. If you have young kids at home, doing it over dinner is kind of a fun way to do this with your kids, or even incorporating it as part of their bedtime routine. Now, I think it's funny with kids, because just like us as adults, sometimes it's really hard to think about the good things that happen. It's hard for them too. And I remember when I started doing this with my kids, who are 4 and 9 years old. At the time they were 4 and 9, they're older now, but I remember them, like the good things they had were, I didn't hit my sister today. We got to have chicken McNuggets for dinner tonight, and stuff like that. And so, like, wow, that's not really that great of stuff. But the other thing that happens over time is the more we practice this, the better we get. And so last summer, I was on a vacation, that a little bit of a vacation you could take during COVID, but with my family, and we came back for going to bed, and one of my daughters said, "Dad, do I have to stop at 3 good things tonight, because I think I have 11." And so it's just one of those things that the more you practice, the better you get. And so 3 good things is pretty powerful and easy, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time in your life to incorporate that. Next tool is just a quick one that I want to share with you, gratitude journaling. And so people can do this different ways. Sometimes I see people taking a photograph on their phone of something that they're grateful for every day, and keeping those things and making a calendar out of it. Sometimes people sit down and actually write. The science behind it shows that if you sit down and write 1 or 2 days a week, that's actually probably more powerful and better for you than trying to keep something every day that you journal on. And the reason behind that is, if you do it 1 or 2 days a week, you tend to sit down and you tend to go deeper, and maybe you write a whole page or 2 versus just a line or 2. And so the gratitude journaling is another powerful, important part of improving our happiness. Here's some of the science and data behind it. When you start a gratitude journal, by 3 months, you're actually just as happy as if you would win the lottery today. And by 6 months, you're twice as happy or more than winning the lottery today. So it turns out that coming to this talk tonight and listening to this is probably better than you winning the lottery. So you know what? Congratulations. Like, this is like a really big deal, right? So you can improve your happiness by something as simple as gratitude journaling a couple times a week. Now, the final tool I want to share with you, excuse me, is my favorite tool, and it is called gratitude letters. These are my children and my grandmother who's since passed away. And so gratitude letters are letters that you write to somebody in your life who did or said something really positive, really important to you, something that maybe they said or did that could have been 20 or 30 years ago, but it still sticks with you to this day. You still remember it. And maybe you haven't thanked that person for it. Maybe you haven't let them know how powerful that was. And so that could be somebody like a grandmother, it could be a school teacher, it could be a spouse, it could be a friend, it could be a random person. And so as we think about this, I'm going to show you a video. I'm going to show you a video of how powerful these gratitude letters are. We'll watch it together, and I'll share a little story with you afterwards. And then your homework for tonight is going to be, as you're watching this video, think about who in your life you'd like to write a gratitude letter to. And that's going to be your homework for tonight, is I would love for you to sit down and spend 15 minutes and write somebody a gratitude letter. And so I'm going to show you how to do that with this video. I think it's really important and powerful. We'll watch it, and then we'll come back together and I'll finish up telling you a little bit more about this. So here comes the video, and we'll talk in a bit.
What makes you happy? Having fun, hanging out with friends, delicious food, making money? Well, consider this. Psychologists have scientifically proven that one of the greatest contributing factors to overall happiness in your life is how much gratitude you show. Yeah? Think about that. Go ahead and marinate on it for a second. You can thank me later if you want. It'll make you feel better according to this study. You go ahead and click on it and read it if you want. Or you can keep watching, because we read it. We thought it might be fun to test out for ourselves. We gathered a selection of volunteers to act as our subjects. First, we gave them a test. They didn't know what we were looking for, but it gave us a pretty good idea of their current level of happiness. We asked them to close their eyes and think of somebody who was really influential in their life, somebody who did something really amazing or important for them. We had them write down as much as they could about why this person was so important. Now, a lot of them thought at this point the experiment was over, until we really put them on the spot and tried to get them to call that person and read what they wrote about. We're going to have you call your mother. So who was that right person for you?
Person is my sister, Erica.
We're going to give Erica a call.
Okay.
Who'd you end up picking?
Friend of mine, Craig Ames. Her name is Dora.
My college accounting instructor.
Really? Is this somebody you're still in touch with today?
No, I'm assuming that he's passed on.
That's a shame.
Great beyond.
You up for it?
Yes.
What would you say if we called up Dora?
Oh, well, we can try, but she lives in Britain.
In Britain?
Oh, no, never by heart. This is awful.
That's fine. I don't know my mom's number by heart.
If it's true that those who are going on are looking down on us, maybe he realized it is correct.
Hey, sweetheart.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
You got a second? Where you at, in the hotel?
I am. I'm in the hotel. You scared me when you asked if I had a second something's wrong.
No, I'm on this little TV show, and they told me to talk about the person that influenced me the most, and I picked you, and they're making me call. They're making me call you.
Oh, wonderful!
Hi, you reached Craig. I'm not here right now.
At the tone, please record your message.
No, come on.
Hello?
Hi,
Hi.
Erica. It's me.
All right, so I got to read you this paragraph. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead,
All right.
sweetheart.
All right. The person that influenced me the most would be my mother, Marlo Dawson. She is a single mother of two. She is a very hard worker and dedicated to her family.
Hey Craig, this is Loie. This is going to be a funny little voicemail, so I hope you enjoy it. I'm so sorry for calling you at 4 o'clock in the morning. I have to read this to you, okay? And you can't say anything, or I don't know. You can respond, but I probably will just keep going. Okay?
Is everything okay?
Yes, but I have to read this out loud to you.
The person who has had the biggest impact on my life outside of Jesus Christ, who is responsible for my existence, was my college accounting instructor. He had a joy and enthusiasm for his job like no other teacher I have ever known.
I love her to death, and she keeps me going with positive talk. She is a woman that knows what she wants and won't give up until it is achieved.
Oh, it's something. I don't know. I'm about to cry because it's so beautiful. I have to say that it's wonderful.
I first met Craig on an independent feature film set in Whitefish, Montana. I recently have been sending Craig a lot of positive thoughts as he suffered a series of health problems. Despite his medical problems, he's continued to work and take pleasure in the small things in life, like sitting quietly with his wife, Janine, on the porch. Erica is my older sister and my best friend. Sometimes it even feels like we are twins. She's my #1 fan and my #1 supporter. She makes me happy because despite all my mistakes and my decisions, she still loves me no matter what. Your friendship is everything. And you are one of the most important person in my life. Even when she has a kid and many children, I will love her. More than her.
I love you.
Bye. Because they made me do it. Thank you for picking up. Bye, sweetie. And then they're like, here, you're going to write this letter. And then I wrote like this whole long ass letter, which, I like don't write. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, guess what? Now we're going to call her and you're going to read her this letter. And I was like, what the?
Before we let them go, we gave our subjects one more happiness test. Now, we mixed up and rephrased the questions so they didn't know they were taking the same test twice. For those who took the time to actually write something down but couldn't make the phone call for whatever reason, we saw happiness increase between 2 and 4%. Good, but not exactly mind-blowing. Now, for those who actually picked up the phone and personally expressed their gratitude, we saw increases between 4 and 19%. So either way, expressing your gratitude will make you a happier person. But you want to know something really interesting? The person who experienced the biggest jump in happiness was the least happy person who walked in the door. What does that mean? That means if you're having a particularly tough time, trying this out will more likely have a greater impact on you. Trust me, I'm in a lab coat.
All right. So let me get to the next slide here. There we go. So I think it's very powerful, as you see, the idea of doing gratitude letters, and it talks a little bit about the science behind it. Doing a gratitude letter will make you happier for up to a month after doing one. It also makes you less depressed for up to a month. I want to share a quick story about one of these and why it is so powerful and important, and then we'll turn the mic back over. So this again is a picture of my grandmother, and one of the people that I wrote a gratitude letter to about 5 years ago was my grandmother. And I have many positive memories of growing up on my grandparents' farm and being there just about every weekend. And for a lot of Family Feud type reasons, for about 10 to 15 years prior to me writing the letter, we hadn't spoken very much at all. And so I decided I wanted to write her a letter, and I reflected on some of those positive experiences growing up. And I also put in there just reflecting on how when my mom comes to visit now and interacts with my kids, it reminds me a lot of her. And I mailed this letter. I hoped that maybe that would open up a door. Maybe another letter would come back. Maybe my grandma would call me. Maybe we would have more of a relationship. And I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited at least 6 months and nothing happened. And then about 6 months later, my grandfather passed away. And so my mom went to visit my grandmother. And my mom also had not seen her mother, my grandmother, for about 2 years because of the same family feud stuff. And when my mom walked in the door, the first thing my grandma said to her was, "Oh my gosh, Cheryl, I need to show you this letter that Corey sent me. It came on a day when I needed it the most, and I read it just about every day." And she went to find it, and she couldn't find it initially. And that wasn't a surprise because you can't really find anything in the house, because that's a whole nother talk I can give on hoarding, but that'll be some other day. But finally, she called my mom into her bedroom. And when my mom went in there, she was sitting on her bed and she had this wicker basket open with the cover off. And she said, "Come in here, Cheryl, I found it." And when my mom walked in there, she had pulled it out and she said, "I remember I put it in this basket because I wanted to keep it forever." And in that basket was my letter, and it was 2 letters from her parents from 60 years ago. And I tell you that story tonight as we end this talk off, not because I want to be a little bit emotional in front of you here, but I tell you that story because these things matter, and expressing your gratitude matters. And when you do small things like this, they have the opportunity to really change your life, because of that letter, those 3 girls who were sitting on that picnic table got to know my grandmother. They got to know their great grandmother. My mom got to have a different relationship with her mother in the last 5 years of her life. And so these are things that we sometimes feel like we just keep to people's funerals. We don't share with them because it might make us uncomfortable. And these are really important, powerful things. And so that's why I tell you that I hope tonight you take this to heart and use it as some of your homework. And so as we talk about gratitude, all kinds of science out there, we know that it improves our sleep, it improves our memory, it improves our immune system function, our relationships, all kinds of stuff. So gratitude is really a gift you give yourself. It is a gift of self-compassion, of self-care. And so coming out of COVID like this, it's one of those things that I think we all need to give ourselves. And it's a way for us to build relationships with each other. So I want to finish this off with the Two Wolves Cherokee legend. And this is something that's been around for a very long time. An old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. "A fight is going on inside me," he said to the boy. "It's a terrible fight, and it's between 2 wolves. One is evil. He has anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, and superiority and ego." He continued, "The other is good. He is joy, gratitude, serenity, interest, hope, pride, amusement, inspiration, awe, love, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you, grandson, and inside every other person too." The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, "Yes, grandfather, but which wolf will win?" To that, the old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." And so we have an opportunity to feed the negative wolf easily every day. How do we look at opportunities like this to incorporate gratitude into our life, to incorporate a positive mindset, to feed that positive wolf? Because it really, truly matters in our long-term health and happiness and relationships and the things that are important to us. And so with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Jim, and we'll go into a little bit more of a panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Corey Martin. That was an excellent overview and presentation. And if you wouldn't mind, take a breather and we'll be back with you real soon. I now have the pleasure of introducing our 2 other speakers, Reverend Curtis Hotchkiss and also Rabbi Jennifer Flam. Reverend Curtis Hotchkiss, to my left, was born in Oxnard, California, and raised in Oxnard. He's a local guy. He went to college at King's Institute and Bible College, where he got his bachelor's degree, and went on to his master's degree at Anderson Bible College in Atlanta, Georgia, where he got his ordination as a minister of Progressive Baptist Ministry in 1991. Currently, we are so fortunate to have Curtis as the Director of Spiritual Care at the Community Memorial Health System, where he oversees the program and is also board certified himself as a chaplain. Curtis is married to Veronica and have 5 children, all of whom live in Oxnard. It's now my pleasure to introduce Rabbi Jennifer Flam, our third speaker. Jenny was born in Los Angeles and moved to Ventura at the age of 12. Of note, she was a candy striper at Community Memorial Hospital while she was in high school, and we tried to get her to wear her candy striper uniform, but maybe that'll be the next program. For college, she went to UC Santa Cruz, where she got her bachelor's degree in history and received 2 master's degree in education and in Jewish letters, as she was ordained as a conservative rabbi at the University of Judaism in Los Angeles. She is also board certified from the University of California at Davis as a certified chaplain. We are so fortunate that Jenny started at Community Memorial Hospital right in the center of the COVID surge in January 2021, and she is still here in June. Welcome home, Jenny.
Thank you.
Jenny is married to Jason and has 10-year-old twins, and she enjoys traveling and learning about all sorts of different cultures and traditions. Now, I have 2 questions for our panel, and I'd like to start with Curtis first. Question 1 is, as a healthcare professional who spent the last 1.5 years battling COVID-19, what did you see and what did you experience that you now are grateful for? Curtis?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Hornstein. And thank you also, Dr. Martin, for your presentation. It was wonderful and good to be with you, Rabbi Flam. This last 1.5 years have been incredibly challenging for everyone. And I don't come here tonight with the pretense that I have all the answers or even a scholarly or philosophical way of approaching what happened with COVID. But I come as a clergyman, and as a clergyman, I believe that there is a bigger meaning in everything that we deal with. And I saw quite a bit, but I am grateful that we have professionals that are able to facilitate and help people that are in need. We've seen so much need, we've seen so much pain, and I am grateful for those people that were able to stay and support our patients that were ill with COVID. As a believer, I believe that there is an existential God that provides sustaining life to all of us, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for my friends, for my colleagues, for my family, and I'm grateful for my health. And that's, I think, what I learned the most, is how grateful we are to have our health and to have each other. So I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. And I'm grateful to be a part of the Community Memorial family. So with that being said, I just want to say that it's been an honor to serve. It's been an honor to be there with those families. I've seen so much loneliness. And it's been hard for the families as well, because they were not able to come in. So prayer, meditation, just being present, those are the type of things that I try to practice.
Thank you so much, Curtis.
Thank you.
Rabbi Jennifer?
So the pandemic threw a wrench in all of our lives in ways expected or completely unexpected. They challenged our fortitude of spirit. It challenged our perception of things. And I would say that through the pandemic, working in healthcare, with all of the travesty, I saw the magic of people showing up and coming together. And even when they couldn't show up and come together physically, they found ways to show up and come together emotionally through Zoom. There was a lot of stretching in different ways. I think the human compassion in moments of uncertainty was another miracle we saw during the pandemic, or see during the pandemic, right? Because as we go forward, there's still blessings to find. And that doesn't mean that there isn't pain to process and there isn't healing to do. All of these kind of conflicting things can happen together. Thank you, Dr. Martin. I think what you said was so important in terms of a gratitude practice on some of those days when there was so much devastation and I wasn't sure that I could take anymore, sitting with people or sitting outside of glass rooms with people who couldn't have their loved ones with them. To have that practice helped me connect to those things greater than myself, that helped me bring strength to those families and to those patients. And those families, they were going through the hardest moments of their lives, and still they found moments of gratitude. It is hard sometimes, this idea that the cup is half empty or the cup is half full. I think that the cup is there, right? And there are moments to be found to be appreciative in every situation. And just because we don't see it this one moment doesn't mean we can't search for it or see it the next. I think the grace that people gave each other, the space to process, the opportunity to transform, all of those things happened with patients, with healthcare workers, with physicians, with families, right? It is a dynamic process. And I think when you say, what am I grateful for in that time? It's different every moment, but I am grateful for the human connection and the strengthening, I think, mostly of that human connection in the most confusing of circumstances.
Thank you so much. Corey, if you can join us in Minnesota, same question to you. As a healthcare professional who spent the last 1.5 years battling COVID-19, what did you see and what did you experience as a physician that you now reflect and are grateful for?
Yeah, I would echo everything that has already been said. I think there are a lot of diamonds in the rough in COVID that we can pull out of COVID, and some of them being the fact that I'm just really proud of the healthcare community and how quickly, when something like this happened, how quickly they changed what they're doing. They moved into doing something differently, and they really responded in a way that I've never ever seen in healthcare, without hundreds of meetings and votes on stuff. It happened overnight, and the quick moving aspect of healthcare was a real positive thing. I think the gratitude that I saw, especially initially from the community of the frontline essential workers, whether it was healthcare workers or our educators, and just the gratitude of the community bringing in meals and bringing in posters to hang on the wall. And so those kind of connecting things, I think, were really powerful. And then I think how this will change medicine forever, in the fact that I can now sit at my desk, dial up my doctor on a Zoom call, and have an appointment without taking time off work, going in and seeing my doctor in our old-fashioned way. Like, there's a lot of positive things that will come out of this.
Thank you so much, Corey. I'd now like to ask our panel the second question, and this is similar but a little different. As a non-professional, and by that I mean as a father, a mother, a spouse, a parent, a sibling, a friend, a farmer, just a regular person, what did you see and experience personally that as you look back over the last 18 months, you can feel gratitude for? Reverend Curtis?
Personally, it was quite difficult going through the COVID pandemic. But I became encouraged, and I am encouraged, when I think about how most of it is behind us. And I always try to practice the thought of gratitude and being grateful, because I heard a gentleman tell me one time, if all of us got all of our problems and put them in a bag, and we took them to a certain place and we set them down, but before we could go back to our seat, we had to pick up someone else's bag. I guarantee when you got back to your seat and you opened up your bag, you would want your bag back, and you would not want that other person's bag. And so we're grateful, because there's no guarantees in life. The only guarantee we have is the breath we're taking right now, and we've learned that, but we have so many reasons to be grateful and have gratitude for just what we've been through and how we are going to, as the doctor says, bounce forward. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Rabbi?
So this last year and a half has transformed me personally in ways I couldn't have imagined, right? From the hustle bustle of being a mother who worked out of the house, a clergy person, with all of the balls in the air and the kids going to school. I have 10-year-old twins, having everything down to a science and thinking that everything was organized and coordinated around me, to everything stopping, to everything becoming unsure. It helped our family take a step back and reassess. It helped us decide to grapple with truthfully and to engage with what are our real values, what is really important to us, what does it mean to make choices based on those values. Where are we being pressured from the outside? What do we want to do internally? And certainly having all of those support structures suddenly removed shifted my perspective and my family's perspective, but it also brought us together, right? When soccer practice stopped and dance practice stopped and after school this stopped, and we had dinner together every night. And I was just telling Reverend Curtis and Dr. Hornstein that my daughter implemented a process of roses and thorns. She still does this almost every night. And she goes around the table, makes everybody in the family share their roses and their thorns. And I think it's okay to share a thorn. At least we're talking about what's bothering us. And a couple of nights ago, there was another rose and another rose and another rose and another rose, and then somebody else threw in another rose. And I realized that they're also teaching us the practice of gratitude. And I don't know that I would have seen that if I maintained that busy schedule. And I think moving into this next phase as we open, all of those other roles still exist. But how are we going to manage them? It'll be different. So, and now I'm back here in Ventura. And that's one of the things that came out of it as well.
And we're so grateful to have you back in Ventura.
Absolutely.
Dr. Martin Corey, as a non-professional, as a father, as a spouse, as a farmer, what did you see and experience personally that now you look back at and you're grateful for?
Well, I'll tell you, I identify a lot with the rabbi because I have 9-year-old twins. And one of the most important things that I think has happened for us and our family in the last 15 months has been our forced ability to slow down, our forced ability to not have to run to gymnastics and dance practice and have all the other things going on. So it never felt like we had enough time for each other. And so it was a real gift to have nothing else to do other than spend time with each other. And I think the hardest thing now over the next several months is how do we continue to hold some of these things as priorities and not say yes to all the things we used to say yes to, because some of them aren't worth saying yes to anymore. We've learned things, we've grown, we've become a tighter knit family. And so we need to give up some of the things that we did before COVID because they aren't going to help us grow and be better after COVID. And so I identify with specifically what the rabbi had said about her family and her twins in particular.
Ladies and gentlemen, I realize we're still virtual, but if you can, wherever you're at now, join me in thanking and being grateful for our 3 excellent speakers, Dr. Corey Martin, Dr. Reverend Curtis Hotchkiss, Dr. Curtis Reverend Hotchkiss, Rabbi Chaplain Jenny Flam, for giving us such a warm and wonderful overview on the benefits and the virtues of being grateful. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. And thank you so much to our community for joining us with us on this wonderful day. Thank you also to the Community Memorial Health System and to all their dedicated staff and clinicians who took such great care of us over the last 18 months. My friends, please stay safe as our state reopens next week. And if you haven't already done so, I wish you seriously consider getting a COVID-19 vaccine. In fact, my advice to you as a physician is get it today. Have a safe and healthy summer, and we'll be back in the fall with more Ethics in Society programs. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Good night.